Hey everybody, I'm Chris Ball of Ewing Outdoor Supply here in Winston-Salem with Luke Yoder from Dura Edge. And right now we're standing on the moneymaker. This is this is a focal point of the game right here. We're on the infield. Here it is 10:30 in the morning after a night game, and we're kind of run through some paces out here, but we're set up pretty daggone good right now based on the care and the work that these guys did last night after the ball game. And you know, Luke, getting your infield ready is such a major process. It's where guys and gals spend their most of their time, and they see the biggest benefit from this. The old saying, 90% of the game's played on the dirt, and we walked out to a great surface this morning.
Absolutely, yeah. That 90% of the game, at times, bases loaded, is played on the infield skin, mound, plate. You're right. That's where the groundskeepers spend the majority of their time. That's where you make your name in the game.
Right.
Right. And as you stated, they had a game last night. You can't even hardly see any cleat marks. They watered it last night, so there's a good moisture base. And so I guess they're going to take the next step today, which could be adding some top dressing.
Right.
I think they've got a mixture of shale and calcine, so they're going to put out some Pro Slide Brown, some Platinum, make sure they got that one even layer. You don't want it piled up, but just one even layer so you're not seeing bare spots.
Yep.
More than likely they'll drag that in and then adjust the moisture, maybe give it a heavy shine before lunch.
Right, yeah, and again, it doesn't need a lot right now. They were fortunate that they didn't have any weather overnight, so there's no standing water. There's no, they're again, it makes their day go by easier when they can do this. Come right out to the infield, work it a little bit, throw out some fresh top dressing, and play ball.
Yep.
And one thing that I'll add, we may talk about it in a little bit about dragging patterns and things like that. There's really no right way and wrong way pattern-wise. The key is to take your time.
Correct.
That is one of the biggest issues that we see all across the country, is that people drag too fast.
Correct. Way
too fast, and it's more of a fleece than it is a punch,
right,
if you will.
Absolutely. Yeah, dragging too fast, especially in circles, you're going to kind of sling it out, build up your edges, and so yeah, that is one step you want to take your time on. It doesn't take long, maybe 15 minutes to get across the infield.
Right. Exactly. So there are lots of practices that you can do on your infield skin daily, as needed. You can nail it, you can float it, drag it, top dress it, water it, roll it. There's a lot of maintenance that goes into it, but you don't necessarily have to do all those every single day.
Correct. And we don't say Dura Edge is easy to maintain, because every infield takes some work. Right. But it is more manageable and more predictable maintenance at all levels of play.
And every stadium is different.
Correct.
Every stadium's got different shade patterns. You may have an old stadium versus a new stadium that doesn't have the greatest drainage. Mm-hmm. So you may get the right side of an infield that will stay a little more damp than the left side. You may have pockets, that will react differently because of the sun, because of the wind pattern, things like that.
Right, absolutely. At this level, it's constantly managing, even microclimates in your infield, like you said. We were in Spartanburg last night, and Irish was telling us about, shade on one side, he gets a couple hours different of sun, and so he's got to really manage those sides differently at that level of play.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, that was a pretty interesting conversation I had with him yesterday when I got out there, and the other thing that he talked a little bit about too was getting used to having a colored product on the infield as well, because it gives that appearance that it's really wet right after you put any water on it.
Absolutely.
So, and that's another great thing about this infield material, is the way that it does hold moisture.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of the major advantages of it, is the retention of the moisture, and you've got more of an ideal window to play the game through the duration of the game to maintain the integrity of the product.
Right. And the cleat in, cleat out, the ball bounce, the footing is so paramount for these infielders and base runners.
Absolutely.
Both offensively and defensively. So again, they've got a great surface here this morning, great surface to work, and looking forward to seeing their process.
Yep, I think they're getting ready to throw out some top dressing. So yeah, they're to the step now. They're getting ready to apply their top dressing. They're using a combination of expanded shale, the Pro Slide Brown. They prefer the darker brown color, again, that nice ball contrast. It appears, even that damp look.
Right.
And then the Platinum calcine clay. They go with a mixture of this, and so they're going to spread that out, do a little raking before they do the screen drag, and probably set the water in.
Yeah, and you know, again, a lot of this is regionally based. You know, they're both excellent moisture management tools for any level. They really are. These guys just happen to use a combination of both.
Right.
You know?
And we'll get into more of the details on the differences of shale and calcine, but I do want to point out that a lot of people don't know how much to put out, or they ask a question, how much do I need? One important thing with the shale is you've got to go by the rates. If you just put out a little bit of shale, you're not going to hurt anything. You won't see the benefits.
Right.
So on the back of the bag, there is clear charts for 100% shale or a mixture, a combination of both.
Right. You know, and the other question is, how much do we put out? Like you said, how much do we put out? These are awesome charts to use, but also a field manager is going to.
Field manager like Matt over here doesn't need the chart.
No,
right?
he doesn't need the
charts
chart.
More for the lower levels.
He's going to go by what he's pulling in the back of his drag.
Correct.
You know, whether he's comfortable with 1 bar,
right,
full of material, 2 bars full of material. I was always a heavy guy, obviously, but you know, I like to be heavy on my top dressing, no matter what I use, and I use the combination of both for a long time.
Yep, absolutely. The groundskeeper's preference and their feel for it, what works for them and their team.
Let's kind of talk about, Luke, your sliding areas, your lead off areas. You know, with the Dura Edge system, basically, you don't have to get a bulk load every time you need to repair. That's the beauty about the super sacks.
Absolutely.
You know, and I know that these guys probably have a couple of them on hand at all times, and you know, that makes your life easier.
Absolutely. You know as well as I do, 20 years ago in the game, when we made a repair at the first base leadoff area, it was a full gator load at times.
Absolutely.
And these guys now have the luxury of going into just a super sack. Sometimes it's just a 5-gallon bucket that they're bringing out to keep up and address that area.
Right. Yeah, you know, and two, when we were in the game, you know, year over year it was load after load after load after load after load of clay.
Right.
You know, I mean, there were years that we did 2 truckloads a year, you know, to get back on grade. Where now with what Dura Edge has done, how the soil's engineered and the structure of everything and how it holds together, and the care and maintenance that guys are devoting to their infield, it's been a major change in our lives, and for the best.
Absolutely, yeah, no doubt. It creates more manageable maintenance, and in the long run, there is a return on investment because you're reducing the material needs by 50% or more.
Right.
You're not having to bring in that load every year, and you can live off a super sack or 2 to get through a season.
Right. Yep. And I'm sure these guys they probably laser grade it once, twice a year. I mean, that's pretty common practice.
Most of the guys
at
at this level are typically every year.
You know, and some guys do it quarterly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, speaking from my experience, I love to do it first thing in the fall. If we could get finished playing, get it, you know, by mid-October, early November, and then it had all winter long to set up.
Yep, and you're not having to find a window in the winter and fight weather.
Right, and then
get it set up and ready for the
February gets, you know, basically in the Southeast, everybody starts playing in February.
Right.
You know, with college ball or high school ball or whatever it is. And February comes quick after Christmas.
And that it does.
You know, it really does.
Yeah.
So again,
not to mention weather, but a lot of the installers are backed up that time of year. So get it done as soon as you can.
Right, absolutely.
So applying the platinum top dressing here, you know, people go in different patterns. That way it's easier to rake. You know, he's going to rough it out before the 3-wheeler comes in here to do the finishing groom. Again, predominantly end users are used to calcine clay.
Right.
You and I talked about shale. It's used at the higher levels, but I think at the lower levels, folks are starting to understand the benefits of it. You know, the expanded shale doesn't suck up water like the calcine clay.
Right.
So you've got that advantage. After rain, it releases it quicker. You can actually become playable quicker. But the big benefit of the expanded shale and using that is it actually locks in the moisture, whereas the calcine draws it out. So it's essentially a moisture management tool.
Right.
Makes your watering easier because it passes through versus the calcine, you know, soaking it up.
Right. It all, you know, and you know, you're saying locking it in, it creates almost like a shade barrier.
Correct.
You know, to Mother Nature's elements every day.
Correct. Yeah.
And you know, it really aids in that moisture retention.
Yep, kind of like mulch, locking it in and
Right.
get you through the game a little bit longer with that ideal moisture in there.
Right. And I don't know if y'all can see how Matt's dragging right now, but he's taking his time. He's not slinging material everywhere. He's paying attention to his edges. You know, he started in this base pit and he's working out from there. He'll have a real nice surface as soon as he's done grooming.
Absolutely. Yep. I always told him, come on through.
I'll do my long drag and then I'll start surface.
All right, come on through. And we always had a 1 foot rule. Look, you know, don't try to get too close. Try to, you know, stay a foot away from the edge, right?
Right.
You can always come back and dress your edges with a rake or a broom.
Right.
That just ensures you're not going over those corners, like you said, in that cutout. That's one of the, you know, areas you really want to maintain. And groundskeeper doesn't want to contribute to wear and tear. So.
Right. Something, you know, and sometimes he can be his own best friend by doing that.
Absolutely.
You know? There's still a lot of handwork that goes in on these infields on a daily basis.
At this level, no doubt.
At this level, for sure.
He's starting. You were talking dragging patterns, and nothing right or wrong on a pattern, but we're mentioning the speed, and he's going at a nice speed now, not too fast, but he's starting with what I call the Zamboni pattern, right? Kind of going up the middle, like a hockey rink, and long passes. He mentioned he's going to follow that up with a circle drag. Kind of standard for what a lot of guys do, and that way you're ensuring you're hitting every square foot twice and getting a nice layer of this top dressing mixed on the surface, not into the surface. We make sure that we keep the top dressing on top, and that's kind of what, you know, you're mentioning. What does Dur Edge recommend for top dressing? Well, it's called top dressing for a reason.
Right.
Some people call it conditioner. We look at conditioner as a field saver application where we're going to test the soil and actually condition your surface, your profile, and not to till in the calcine or the pro slide, but to maintain that top layer for a good sliding surface and ideal moisture management.
Right. Yeah, and that's you know, top dressing is what it is. It's that barrier between the cleat and the clay, or the ball and the clay. You know, and that's really what it's for.
Right.
That's really what it's for. You know, I'll say this too about Matt. His dragging, you know, you were talking about dragging patterns a minute ago. He doesn't stop and start at the same place either.
That's very important
to create that. You know, you do that, you create that belly. You know, you don't stop your drag at the same spot in the back corner every night to create that big pile.
One of the easiest things to change in your program.
I mean, you've got 90 feet between each base. You know, you got a lot of different areas you can start to stop at.
You and I have both walked on many fields, and we can look at right away, and we can tell where they start dragging and where they end, because they've got a low spot where they start every time,
right,
and then they've got a high spot where they end. So, changing that up is smart. And eventually, you get through the season and you start to actually see high spots. Well, that's where you start. Start in the high spot and stop in the low spot, and you'll slowly change those areas.
Right. Exactly. You know, and then there's another tool that you have available in your toolbox, a nail drag.
Correct.
You know, you use that, or your scarifiers underneath your seat on your machine. You know, you have the ability to cut that high, and then with your drag to bring it back into a low.
Absolutely.
That you have. And you know, your key low areas are always going to be your sliding pits at first base, especially around the bag at second. You know, both sides. A lot of people neglect the third base side of second base. You know, and there's a lot of activity during a day, during workouts, early work, infield practice, whatever, that create that little nightmare there on the backside of second base.
Right. Yep.
So, with the information we've given you today, you can get all these things from our stores at Ewing. You know, we carry the full line of Dur Edge products. The hand drags, the big 6x3 drags, the rakes, everything you need to maintain your skin at a high level.